health and wellness, a whole new kind of thing. By a show of hands, how many builders out there do some form of health and wellness offering in their homes? I got one, maybe two. This is the reason why, maybe two and a half, okay, close enough. This is why we're discussing this morning. Health and wellness after the little, maybe you heard there was this little pandemic a year ago or so, maybe some of you were affected by it. After that little experience, most human beings, I can't say Americans or Europeans, or because it affected pretty much everybody on the planet, decided that maybe there was something to the whole notion of things like private spaces and meditation and wellness and indoor air quality, circadian lighting, right? We're going to talk about circadian lighting. For those of you who don't know what that is, hopefully my definition will do less to confuse you. But I am joined here up on the stage by two wonderful experts in the field of light and air. So, to my immediate right, this is Joseph Hellenmeyer from April Air, and Angela Larson, who goes by Angie, for those of you who don't know, from Savant. Now, first things first, our friends at Savant, you will notice on the table, there's a couple of, don't everybody grab for them at once, but there are some really cool little giveaways, and we'd like to thank our friends at Savant so much. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Savant actually owns a little division called GE Sync. GE Sync is a smart lighting company. They have some really cool products, and they were kind enough to furnish us with some of those products today. So thank you very much to Savant for that and for some breakfast this morning. So we appreciate you. But as we move into our content, like we always do, purpose and flow, right? Our purpose today is very simple. We're going to talk about health and wellness in new homes. Our flow is, you'll notice there's only three of us up here. And you may be thinking to yourself, you know, he's had like fleets of people up here up until now. It's because we have a lot of information, but we wanted to make this one a little bit more interactive than the ones we've had before. We're going to be talking about some newer concepts, and we're going to be talking about some newer things. There's going to be questions that come up. So please, 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 please feel free, raise your hands, ask questions. We're going to be talking about all elements of things well in the home, all right? So trends in the market, some practical tips for improvement, how to create an effective demo, all right? How do you show it off? It's hard to see 2.5 particles in the air, which is the reason why we have to have filters to filter them, because we could be breathing them in right now, we have no idea. CO, you don't see CO, you don't see CO2, you don't see the gases. Light's a fun way to show demonstration of wellness, and we're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end. And then we're going to hopefully give you some good, better, best options. So I'm going to go first. I'm going to give you a little overview of some of the terms and things that we're going to be talking about. And then we're going to go forward with Joseph. It's going to talk about some indoor air quality and what it means to have quality air inside. And if he can come up with a definition, that would be really great, because at this point, there is not a governmental agency or a certification for clean indoor air. And although there are lots of rules and regulations around water, there are almost no regulations around air. It's a problem. And then we're going to talk with Angela about lighting, and then we're going to have some Q&A. So this is an interesting quote. Dr. Singer from the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and it's fun, because he's a very learned man, but he clearly doesn't know English very well. So literally millions to many millions. So is it literally millions or is it many millions? People are routinely being exposed to air pollutants at levels that we don't allow outdoors. So think about that, all right? The EPA is responsible for the outdoor air quality, right? If any of you live in a big city or maybe up in the Rust Belt, there are all kinds of rules and regulations when it comes to factories belching out stuff into the sky, but none of those rules apply to our indoor spaces. None of those rules apply to this room that we're sitting in right now. None of those rules apply to our homes that we build or the things that we do, except if you happen to be one of our neighbors from the north. I know that there are some Canadians in the room. I'm looking for, they're around here someplace. There he is, right there. There are some Canadians in the room. The Canadians recognized pretty early on that indoor air quality was very important. Things like central vacuums, believe it or not, are required in most new homes in Canada. and they have to be vented to the outside. So although we may put central vacuums in some of our homes, we don't always vent them usually into a garage or something. In Canada, they have to be vented to the outside. Things like ERVs and HRVs and things like that Joseph is going to talk about, are required in most new construction up in Canada and not here in the United States, because they recognize that when it gets cold, houses get tight. When houses get tight, air gets foul. When air gets foul, people get sick. But here in the United States, we don't have those kinds of regulations. And so it's up to the builder or the consumers to sort of demand and change those things. So indoor environmental quality is a new term that you're going to see because it encompasses all of the physical aspects of what goes on inside a space, whether it's commercial or residential. And there are a couple of different organizations that are working towards what we call Homes for Health. And as you can see here, there's lots of different elements, actually 9, that go into a healthy space. And it's important to note that there are 9 different things. If you remember yesterday, we only talked about 7 technology things. But today we're talking about 9 elements when it comes to healthy home, because there's lots of different things that people don't even think of. Noise. Noise is an important factor of a healthy home. If the environment is too noisy, then it's not conducive to calmness and healthfulness, right? Moisture. If anybody lives up north in places like Chicago, you know that humidity is just as horrible a thing that has to be worked out in homes as heat and cold. Because again, when a home gets sealed up and then it gets warmed, moisture forms. Moisture forms, mold forms. Mold forms, air quality goes down. Air quality goes down, we get sick again. So, lots of different elements there. Home and lifestyle changes, right, that we all reconsidered after that pandemic we talked about briefly. So interestingly enough, you'll notice that the 3 yellow bars, water quality, comfort of home, and indoor air quality, all jumped up to the top of this chart, whereas they were at the very bottom of this chart before 2019. And so it's very interesting to see, this is a survey that was done by, the NAHB for home buyers. And it's interesting to see that all of a sudden these are things top of mind. The more things are top of mind, you know as well as anybody that when people come to see your homes, they're going to expect you to address their concerns. And if these are their concerns, it's up to us to address them. I'd also like to note 2 others that are completely off topic, but deliveries of packages is number 1. Very interesting. And number 3 is broadband quality. So I bring those up because those are things that we've discussed over the last couple of days. Those are elements that we've had in other sessions and things that we've touched on. And so I wanted to bring to your attention the fact that those were still there. Security, home, energy management actually are bigger than the layout. How many of you spend hours and hours and hours and hours on the layouts and the architecture of your homes and spend far less time on the elements that go inside it? Interesting. Okay. That's why I threw that up there. I thought it was interesting. So, Americans spend $43 billion on things that are marketed or marked as allergy control. $43 billion. It's a lot of money being, and some of it's snake oil, and we won't get into that here, but I think we all recognize the fact that there are some nefarious characters out there that may be marketing things to us that are not necessarily healthy but sound healthy. But the fact that $43 billion is being spent each year means that there is an opportunity for us in this room to take a hold of some of those marketing dollars and some of those disposable dollars and see if we can get a hold of them when they're buying our homes. And so that's why I put that statistic up there. Air, light, and thermal comfort. Thermal comfort, so everybody understands air and light, right? Air we breathe, light we see. Fairly straightforward. Thermal comfort. You've noticed maybe that when you heat your homes in the wintertime, for those of you who live in cold climates, you can heat your home to a lower temperature than you cool your home during the summertime. Why? Because thermodynamics. The thermal change from outside to inside, the differential, or delta as we call it, in temperature, is much more sensitive to human beings. You've sat in a room before and it's felt chilly. And you stand up and you go and you look at the thermostat and it says 70 degrees. 70 degrees is not chilly. Why do I feel a chill in the room if it's 70 degrees? Because the human body is accustomed to a specific temperature. You may be dressed a different way. You may have just come in from a colder climate, and so the body takes time to acclimate to a temperature. That's thermal comfort. Thermal comfort, as it applies to home building, has a lot to do with the insulation and the way that your homes are manufactured. Your homes are built because insulation, for instance, a cold wall will give off cold even though the temperature in the room is set to whatever the thermostat says it is. So the air in the room could be 70 degrees, but the cold coming off of a poorly insulated wall will create a chill, and that will destroy thermal comfort. Thermal comfort is not necessarily about the absolute temperature of the room. It's about the human feeling, the emotion, the emotional response of the healthfulness of a home. So, different kind of concept. It's not just about science. There's also emotion that plays into healthfulness. And then we get into other things like water, mind, sound, and materials. So we touched upon this a little bit during our work from home session 1,000 years ago, whenever that was, because it feels like it was a week ago, and all of the data that you've gotten since then. But all of these elements tie into how we can spend time in our homes, how comfortable our homes are, how open they are, depending on where you live. A lot of times outdoor living is a larger thing, right? So Arizona, Texas, Florida, California. Outdoor living is a big thing, although my friends in Minnesota tell me that they love outdoor living. They just only get to do it for about 2 weeks a year. That's it. That's all they get. So, but all of these elements go into the healthfulness and the comfort of the home. And that's why the emotionality of healthfulness is just as important as the science behind it. So, the elements of a healthy home are materials, indoor air quality, sanitary surfaces, circadian lighting, sleep sanctuaries. This is where we get into, bedrooms that have a little feng shui to it, but we're not going to talk about that because I have no idea what it is. Biophilic design. That's a fun one. Biophilic design. Brand new term. If you will remember, when Allie was sitting up here and talking about work from home, each of the vignettes that she showed you had a plant. You'll notice that even in this room, although these are silk, but they're plants, biophilic design has a lot to do with bringing the outside inside. And so it's about using elements of the outside to create warm spaces inside, whether it be living plants or the materials that you use that are more natural, exposed wood, things of this nature, create a biophilic environment or a biophilic design. So the picture that I put up there on purpose, you'll notice the jute mat and the plants in the corner, the natural things that are in there, that's a biophilic design. And so your designers and decorators can help you with that. That, believe it or not, human beings respond to that at a core level. We don't even realize that the elements that are in the room are biophilic until it's pointed out to us. But we respond positively to these kinds of elements, especially in model homes, because it's deep in our DNA that we want to be outside and we want to be part of nature. So it's an interesting concept. And then, of course, spiritual spaces. Again, there's all kinds of concepts around what creates a spiritual space. It's not necessary that you hang, shrunken heads or anything. It's more about the idea of being in the space and being part of the space. Natural light plays into a large part of these elements as they go and they put together these kinds of spaces. So, how does technology impact wellness? Because this is the TecHome Builder Summit, and technology is near and dear to my heart, I wanted to talk just for a moment about things how technology can. Now, our illustrious board members here will be speaking a lot about technology because they're going to be scrubbing the air and affecting the light using technology, but also things that may be beyond what you're thinking about. Noise generators. There are lots of different types of noise generators that are used for lots of different reasons. I have one because I have tinnitus, and I have tinnitus for many years, and it drives me crazy. And so when I go to sleep at night, I need something to create a little bit of noise so that the noises in my head, not the voices, the noises, that's a totally different thing, do not keep me up. And so I have a little white noise generator and a gray noise generator that help me fall asleep. But other noise generators can do things like sound masking. They can do so that you can't hear other noises that are going on. We've all worn noise-canceling headphones, for instance. Noise-canceling headphones are noise generators for calming acoustics. What they're doing is they're matching the frequencies and inverting them so that the noise outside doesn't reach the noise inside. So those are noise masking technologies as well. And then, of course, we have air filtration and sensors. Don't overlook the idea of sensors. Most of us put in the minimum sensors. What are the two minimum environmental sensors that are in every one of your homes? CO and smoke. Give that man a lighting control system. No? Okay. CO and smoke, right? And we typically only put in the minimum amount that we have to for the AHJ that we're in. But there's more to it than that. Indoor air quality sensors are now becoming more and more prevalent. They're becoming less and less expensive. And so it's an added benefit and an added value to your homeowner to have an indoor air quality sensor as part of your home offering for their peace of mind. What's the third one? And this is a little bit of a trick question. Only some of you may know this, but there's a third indoor air quality sensor that's required in most of the country, especially the northern half. Radon. See, he's just going to answer every question this morning. So I'm going to owe him money at the end. So radon sensors. I learned a very important lesson when I moved from Florida to Pennsylvania. We bought our house. We hired a home inspector. It was not a new home. It was a used home. And so we had a home inspector come in and check it out. And he presented me with a report. And he looked at me and said, "Great news. You don't need a radon mitigator in your basement." And I looked at him and went, "A what? What the hell's radon?" He was like, "Radon. It's uranium in the ground. It comes up through your basement and can kill you." It's like, what are you talking about, kill me? It's impossible. There's something that's going to come up out of the ground that's invisible that's going to kill me? How crazy is that? And he's like, "Yeah, radon." So being the crazy nut job that I was, of course, I put a radon detector. I spent, and this is 25 years ago, spent like $1,000 on a radon detector that sat in my basement because my kids were going to play in the basement, you know. Nowadays, there are much less expensive options and there are much easier options for all kinds of indoor air quality, things like PM 2.5, and I don't want to steal Joseph's thunder, but a whole bunch of different types of gases and things. And it also boils down to the materials, right? You all now use formaldehyde-free building materials. You all use carpeting that doesn't outgas. You use paint products that are much safer. All of these elements go into the indoor air quality, but sensors can actually be put into the home to give the homeowner another sense of peace of mind when they move in. Okay. And last but not least, some good, better, best, right? It's hard to just throw some packages at you, but some elements that you should think of. It obviously all depends on the demographics of the people and types of homes that you're selling, right? What you sell in a semi-custom $2 million home in Southern California is completely different from a $350,000 tract home in Texas. Okay, so putting that aside for the moment, there are a couple of elements that you should think of. First of all, small changes create a very big impact. Lighting. Angela's going to talk about lighting. She's going to talk about how circadian can impact things. Filters. Excuse me, how many of you upgrade the filters and talk about the fact that you've upgraded the filters in the first run of your HVAC system? Not one of you, I guarantee it. Because the filter that comes with the system is the one that the HVAC guy has on the back of the truck. He throws it in there. It's a 3M, it's probably a 10 or 11, all right? How much would it cost you to put in a 16? 20 bucks, maybe? How much marketing clout could you get out of the fact that you put in a 20 and you put in an upgraded filter and you could call it out? And by the way, all the construction dust that's in the ductwork, because we all know there is construction dust in the ductwork, gets filtered out in the first few months with that filter. How far do you think you could take your marketing and your reputation if 6 months later you sent them another filter? Very low dollars. Very big impact. Little things that you can do when it comes to wellness. Lots of options for the concerned buyer. There will be buyers that come to you very concerned that have had maybe health issues or have moved from a big city. Giving them the options and talking to your contractors and your vendors about what those options might be, give them an opportunity to feel comfortable in their new home. And finally, create a sanctuary in the master bedroom. There's a lot of talk about design and elements and things that go into the master bedroom to create sanctuary. One of the things that Angela's going to talk about is the circadian lighting and creating these small private spaces with circadian lighting within these very special places.